That's about an hour and a half
Which
west.
maybe
Straight
afterwards.
west.
Abihu
Just as
River.
far north.
Oh,
Range of time.
oh, wow. So it takes a while to get there.
I think we're recording now. I didn't hear it
What's
come
that?
on. I didn't hear it over
We go
the.
up through West.
I should know.
Yeah,
10 to
I know.
8 to
I
this,
know, I
so-
know. I know.
It's recording. Okay.
Well,
thank
we
you.
just got it a year ago.
Sitting here.
Yeah, like
Did-
4 years.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
My husband's
Yeah.
retired.
I didn't grab it. Did you
No, I
leave
got
it?
it.
So that's where, yeah,
That's
they're
where he
quiet.
That's serious
So quiet.
trustee anticipation right there.
We good? Okay.
Okay.
So we are.
Okay. Is it me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Welcome to the March 10th, 2025 Finance Committee meeting of the Village Board for the Village of Lake Bluff. Clerk, please call the roll.
Member Fisher?
Here.
Member Rappin?
Here.
And Chair Rudd.
Here. Okay, first order of business is approval of the minutes from our February 10, 2025 meeting. Anyone, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second, I do have a comment.
Okay,
It's
please.
very minor. I've never said it before, but occasionally my name is spelled with a C. And it is in this one, and I'm just
come on.
Fisher.
All
No
right.
C.
Sorry.
We'll find it. We'll fix it.
That's fairly noted. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Hearing none opposed, the motion passes. Next is our non-agenda items and visitors. The Finance Committee allocates 15 minutes at this time for those individuals who would like the opportunity to address the committee on any matter not listed on the agenda. Looks like a standing room only crowd. What do we have?
Online.
Shocking. Okay, hearing no interest in speaking to us about non-agenda items, we will move on to item number 4, business items. 4A is review of the Vehicle Equipment Replacement Fund, which I like to call the VERF.
Perf. That's a great acronym.
Bravo.
Oh, right. Do we have a report on that?
Sure. So as included in the packet, basically the biggest expenditures in this fund, other than the purchase of the squad car, which is an annual event, is the list of technology expenses that were included. Particularly of note that are unusual for this year is virtualization of the phone system, migration to 365 for Office, BSNA cloud upgrade, which is the financial software that will upgrade to a cloud version. So no longer need to VPN in. You can remote in or just log in through a website once we get that migrated. And then the computer switches is also a big expense, and the Zoll monitor replacement for the fire department. Most of the other ones are routine. Access control for the public safety center is also a non-routine item that's added on there. That system is pretty antiquated. I don't know what the year is, but it's
Talking
been,
about updating it for
it's been 15 plus years. So that server to that system for the doors is about to not be replaceable. So I don't know if anyone has any questions on that list.
The big one obviously the big spike is the fire apparatus, and that's the one
Mhm.
that we are working with the department on, trying to identify a realistic plan. It's a placeholder there that you see in the VERF. It's something that I had a conversation with Chair Ryder about this earlier today. The village has found different ways to achieve our objective to have apparatus at the ready to include. Years ago, the village jointly purchased a fire apparatus with the city of Lake Forest, and they housed it and responded to all our calls. It was a great deal. And so, anything is possible at this point, but we wanted to more properly account for the cost of a new apparatus, which is extremely high and takes anywhere to 3 to 5 years for delivery now. So, but we're working with the department. We just wanted to get a plan in place to start paying for what something like that would actually cost. And so we've been saving away, but not enough to meet the current pricing that have really skyrocketed post-COVID. So that's really a placeholder. So that'll get ironed out in the upcoming
Right.
years. Yeah.
We look to how that
Yeah.
gets financed.
So I wonder if the other expenses, the
Mhm.
448 that are shown on page 7 of 82 of the packet, it, that is also higher, excluding the saving for the fire apparatus, right?
Yes.
It's quite a list of all of the things that need to get done. I was kind of impressed by, by just one after another, the items. Would you say that this is typical that we have a list of 20 technology changes, technology updates that we need to do?
So typically no, it is shorter usually, but this year added on to the end for right off the bat are, the costs related to body cams and the LPR imaging technology and the camera installs to the fire department. Those are new. Some of them are repetitive in nature. And then some of the other items that I went over already. So yeah, typically we have about 10 or 15 items in
Yeah.
this category.
Not
And
too
most of them
crazy,
are
yeah.
replacement or maintenance type agreements that are over 5,000. So they sit in the replacement fund. But we have some large things that we're working on this year.
The cloud migration, yeah, being a big part of that.
And you're replacing, one thing I'm looking at that list, being IT background type, you have to buy a VLA SQL Server to core license at $9,000. But where is the cost for your server in that list? Typically you buy a new license when you buy a new server because it's a set license for your equipment, but I don't see. the
Corresponding
software-
server.
Corresponding server for that,
Yes,
I have to ask. Get you
because
an
if
answer for that.
you're virtualizing, you're sending to the cloud a few other things. I don't
Right.
know why you're buying a SQL Server license behind. Just a side question, it's kind of weird.
Okay, I'll ask and find out.
Because also, but are you saying that you also want to keep stuff racked on the other side? of
Yeah,
the
not
street?
everything is cloud-based, that's for sure.
Okay.
No.
But I wonder if that one needs to be physical here or cloud-based, that's why.
Okay, I'll find out.
Yep, for me, looking at this list, it is a very big list. Relative to annual spend, it's a little bit higher than we've done in the past, but not that much higher and pretty consistent with what we plan to spend in this area in the next few years. And I really rely on you, Drew, and the team to come up with this list and to know what we need here. Because this is such a technical list, and I'm sorry if I was spacing out earlier, who creates this? Is it our consultants?
Yeah, we work with, yes is the answer. InterDev is our IT consultant and they're our CIO. And so we work with them to develop this list. Bettina sits down with them and goes back and forth. She has a good feel for our internal network and works with them to make sure that our shopping list matches our needs as we enter the budget year.
Okay, so Bettina, for you being the closest person to this consultant, you feel like you are properly vetted in understanding all of these and have been convinced that this is everything that we need?
For the most part, yes, I would say so, yeah. I mean, we've gone through all this, I went over extensively with all of them and the needs for what some of those are and some of the costs have been updated.
Some of this stuff.
Some of the stuff is estimated a little high, I will say that, like, for example, 365, depends on what kind of licenses we get for what tier people,
Mhm.
tier 1,
Mhm.
2, or 3, and we haven't determined that yet.
Yeah.
So the cost is just on the high end, it will be less.
I mean, I personally feel so unqualified to be able to vet this list that I'm really
Right.
depending on those.
Yeah,
I understand.
and I would, none of this is a stretch for us. And this is
Yeah.
stuff like, we've been looking at this OS 365 for some time. We actually made a conscious choice a few years ago not to do it
Mhm.
and made an investment in some hardware because it was just more economical for the village, it was an organization of our size. But now we're at the point where, okay, now we need to invest in other hardware or do we make the jump? And so like now we're making the jump. So we've been talking about it for a while.
So the 365 license typically has either everything off premise or you keep some of the licenses in-house and then use cloud services for storage, OneNote and OneDrive. So you
Mhm.
keep those Word and Excel and PowerPoint licenses local right on your computer, or everything's on the web? What did you choose?
I think everything's gonna go to the web because we'll have to, use Duo to authenticate when we go into the applications,
Okay.
from
You-
what I've
you
been
will-
told.
My question really is, you will have a hit in performance on your computers if you lose the web, if you lose access, or you have a slow access, you will have issues working.
Right,
So, I mean, one of the solutions is you have the same licenses, but you keep software on your computer, so you can still work local before everything gets
Mhm.
shipped to the cloud for storage and saving your documents and everything else. You have choices.
okay. Keep it in mind.
Did anyone else have any comments or questions? Okay, thank you. We'll move to item B, a discussion regarding the capital improvement budget. Or B, and I think that's the memo in your file dated March 6th. That goes through a great deal of that explanation, but Bettina, why don't you take us through the high points?
Sure. So as we kind of started to review at the last meeting, included in the packet is the capital improvement plan, which goes through 2 years of, or the last year of the capital fund itself, in which we're including a $500,000 transfer from general. We're including the Green Bay Road reconstruction, the bridge. $1 million is being budgeted for CBD Block 1 pending approval from the board. And there's some birch stabilization work. There's sanitary sewer improvements, the Bluff Road ravine stabilization, and then the Lake Bluff, North Chicago Ped Bridge. I don't know, Jeff, do you have anything I also included all the sheets related to the capital plan that goes over, each of those projects that are on the 15-year summary. Some are not necessarily part of the current budget, but they're on the sheet, so we included information on, what those entail. Also included was the rating scale that gave you an overview of how staff, that being Jeff, the village engineer, rated the projects and the weighted score and the average score for those based on the criteria that we have laid out. That's really all I have.
And I would add that some of these projects that are in here are funded primarily by others. And given what's been happening lately, there's been a lot of hand wringing over some of these projects going to get funded or not. Whether taking funds from the US government that are passed through the state and down to us. And we've been having those conversations with our partners. And as an example, IDOT has advised that the head of programming for our district told me a week and a half ago that they are proceeding, all systems go, that things will be funded. That she said most certainly for things that have already been awarded, for example, the 41176 pump project, that is happening without doubt. There are other big project this year in Lake Bluff is the resurfacing of Sheridan Road, and that's going to be awarded in April. She doesn't believe that that won't be funded at this point. And again, they're proceeding at status quo pace, and that's not a big ticket item to begin with, but that's how they're proceeding. And so the idea of those $80-20 that we're getting for the Green Bay Road projects, one of those that goes through from the, flows from the feds to the state. So is that in question? Again, right now, to the best of our knowledge, those funds will be there, and that's how we're proceeding. So, why we would not proceed in that manner, and we're going to continue to communicate. That's how the timing will continue to be on that same pace. And Jeff, you haven't heard anything differently in the last 7 days?
No, every day there's maybes, but
Yeah.
there's nothing concrete.
Yeah. So,
The capital fund balance, we have the chart, and from last meeting, we typically want that to be at least $500,000, like that's the lowest we want it to go. Is that-
capital fund is different. It's not like operations where it's, right, that's going to ebb and flow with what we're doing and how much money we purposely leave there or don't leave there.
I'm thinking of the general fund.
Right.
Mhm.
And so the general fund, I didn't see that in here, but can you remind me? It's just, what I want to establish is we have a plan here, and I want to establish that that plan does not take us below our threshold of where we want the general fund to be.
It doesn't.
What?
It
It does slightly,
but not,
but not.
not in the amount that we talked about. It was right around the 50%.
Right, it was like 53% for FY '26 and then 27 based on the projects that we had listed and some of the transfers that were required. I think we were in the high 40s.
And remind me, it was 53% of what?
That's the fund balance?
So
Year of
the fif-
operating costs.
A year of operating. Okay.
costs.
So the capital plan that we have here reflects, inter transfers.
Mhm.
And those inter transfers never get below what our desired thresholds are.
Right,
Okay, so
I will say, it does not get uncomfortable.
no,
Yeah,
it doesn't. This is actually the first year, assuming that all the things that we have planned for, come to fruition, that we're getting closer to that fund balance number based on what we've been saving for the Green Bay Road project.
For these specific
and for
projects,
these
right?
specific events that we knew were out in the future several years ago. So that's the reason why our fund balance numbers are running so high to begin with.
the,
The capital fund itself doesn't have those thresholds, so we took these projects that used to sit in the general fund and moved them out and created a capital fund years ago so that
Yeah.
they wouldn't affect the balances that way. And we could just fund the project.
And some of that was too, like, the idea that we created this new stormwater utility fund, which was going to take money from that as well. As planned, so.
I can keep asking questions or,
Go ahead,
okay. So
please.
the public works capital projects, which is a youth thing, right?
Mhm.
Depends on-
Where-
Oh, it depends on which.
Page are you on?
I'm on the chart, the master
The
chart. just the-
master chart, which we have in front of us as well. Yeah,
Yes, the
yeah.
top portion. That's mostly ongoing maintenance, right? That's just, we do the same stuff.
Reoccurring investment in the assets.
Correct. And there's not a lot elective here. And I guess I just like a general opinion, from your standpoint, this looks like a very reasonable plan. I'd like to cross this off the discussion list, just as this is ongoing, regular maintenance that we need to do.
Yeah, I don't think this has changed much from what we've seen in the past year since we did this 2 years.
With the exception of the water fund.
The water what?
No, he means the public works section.
Yeah.
Oh,
The
yeah.
top part, 1 through
1 through
16.
16.
1 through 16.
Yep.
So I don't have any questions on that because that looks pretty easy. Can you remind me, the street rehab MFT, there's a couple of big spends throughout the years. Remind me of what that is?
So we use MFT dollars every third year right now. So the street rehab non-MFT, which is item. What's that one?
Number 4.
Number 4. So that one we skip every third year. There's a very small amount for some miscellaneous things.
Mhm.
And then we use MFT dollars every third year as they pile up.
And what's
So,
MFT?
so
Motor-
more fuel tax dollars that we've chosen to accumulate over 3-year periods to get economies of scale rather than doing a little bit each year on MFD dollars. So we save it
There's,
and then spend it, and do a big road.
there's a lot of extra paperwork and IDOT approvals when you use MFT dollars. So we'd rather than use a little every year and do that extra work every year, we wait till it's enough to do pretty much our whole program in every third year.
So the projects are the same types of projects?
Yeah. Lines
In
4.
line 4 and 17 is just where they're funded from?
Right,
Yes.
I
exactly.
see.
It's all road resurfacing and paving.
And then our last meeting, we did talk about the water distribution system. I remember asking you about that, but I can't remember. I think that's just repairs to the ongoing water system for a very dated water system. And we simply need to make a significant invest in the next few years.
Yes.
And that, yeah. Okay, the storm sewer trunk, I don't have any questions. We've talked so much about that. The first big swath at 3.9, it's on our dime, and then there's going to be bonds for the bigger portion later on.
The 3.9, 2.4 of that is to be reimbursed by the county.
Okay.
They just are making us front it. We just received a
Oh, that's
copy
right.
of the IGA last week. We're looking at that,
By
probably gonna
council.
bring that to
Mhm.
you in April for approval. But yeah, that's 1.5 of that is our permanent spend. 2.4 is reimbursed by the county.
Is that also the case in the out years, 28, 29, and 30, or are those fully funded by us.
There are no other commitments right now.
Do we have
Other
our
than
fingers
the-
crossed?
Other than the state has,
The state's saying they're gonna
Committed.
pay within the right of way and, the feds, the 750, which is SMC is used to pay for the design work. But we're pursuing a Protect grant again, as well as other sources. So
there's an Army
Chasing
Corps
money.
grant that we're gonna be applying for sometime soon as well.
So do the out years, 28, 29, and 30 presume some contribution from others, or are those worst case scenario numbers? Seems to me they're probably presuming we get some.
30 are, they could be partially grant funded, but we're assuming bond funding with the
Mhm.
payment coming from the stormwater utility fund.
Okay. And there aren't any expenditures further out from that, 31, 32, 33, but I know that this is a, long-term project. Is it just that it's too speculative at this point, or?
yeah, I mean, it's one
What?
of those, like, we applied for the Protect grant, and if we got those monies, like, we would start building, probably you guys would prioritize the various straws into the project and keep spending, right, as money became available, and we'll always be pursuing grants, and it's, to your answer, or to your point, yes, it was probably too speculative to start really nailing down other
Mhm.
projects now.
And if those 3 years are fully bond funded, then you're talking 15-year out before we can.
Rebond, yeah.
Re up the bonds?
Without any.
Or without
contributions.
alternatively raising the stormwater utility to create another set of revenue streams. Yeah.
So just the amounts that are on here, we think that'll get us to Moffett Road. We think that'll get us all the way downtown. I'm just trying to
So the-
picture what this means, right?
The 28, 29, 30 numbers. That adds up
Yeah,
To
yeah.
10 million, that will get us somewhere around Evanston,
Okay.
maybe.
Up
plus or minus
North
a few
Avenue.
hundred feet.
Uh-huh.
The state has said they would fund everything in their right of way, which would get us, to Sheridan and East North. So there's a block or two. There's
Okay.
several million
Get out there
dollars
with
in that gap.
shovels at that point.
WPA.
Or is that, or is that where it's 30 feet underground? Maybe we don't want to
Definitely
commit.
30 feet is a tunneling machine that you need. for that.
Yeah, we won't be doing that with
It
shovels.
makes the most sense to try to do as much of that at one time as you can, because once they mobilize the equipment to do that, that's a big cost, just getting the equipment here. So hopefully we can get the money put together. to
All
kinda-
kidding aside, that's from Evanston to Sheridan, or
No, from.
where
so
is the
our-
tunneling machine needed?
Right when we get to Moffett, which is our current project, we're
Uh-huh.
planning, but that's kind of where it breaks to where it's more economical to tunnel.
I see.
From that point west.
I see. Good to know. So it would make sense to continue going beyond Evanston because you have the tunneling machine.
Ideally, we
All right.
have a little while to try to, we have other grants we're going to be applying for and always looking for money to try to put that together in one piece.
Interesting. Thank you. Go ahead.
I'm
You're doing
I'm
an
just-
awesome
I'm going
job.
through this.
Keep
The
going.
Green Bay Road, we've talked about that for a long time. The budget has 3 years, 26, 27, 28. Why, we're not going to be under construction for 3 years? Why is it spread out like that?
It's 2 years of construction, but there's a lot of engineering to happen in 26. We are still trying to get cleared from the historical people in Springfield about the trusses. That's supposed to come very soon, but.
The existing bridge structure.
there
they
are-
view as
Yeah,
a historic structure.
Are you in the position to
Underappreciated.
save it, or are we going to?
no, it's,
It's been saved
what you
once
see, those
before.
steel trusses were the original bridge. And when they did this bridge in the 80s, they put the bottom
in
foot of them
concrete?
in concrete.
Yeah.
And we're trying to convince the state historical office that it is impractical to chip all that concrete off of those trusses and try to reuse them. They also limit our sidewalk width, so we can't have a proper width of a sidewalk. I don't know if you've ever walked over that now on the wood planks, but there's a very narrow piece there trying to get around that ironwork. So we've made that case to them and we're waiting for them to on high come down and agree or disagree. Or they might ask for us to do some other way in our project to honor those structures, but it is a memo we've been waiting for a long time. It will come very soon.
I thought you were actually getting really close to have an answer from them.
I thought
Yes.
so too. I thought that in March. I've been trading voicemails with the state a little bit here, trying to see if we can cut to the actual person who's making this
IDOT is
decision.
on our side with this one.
They've been pushing.
Yeah,
But it's been
it's been too long.
too long,
And that is 75% grant.
roughly.
It's 80-20, but it's essentially 75-25.
There's some expenses that are not
Covered.
fundable, so those are ours.
And the big picture is, from a design perspective, is we want to leave it like it is. Keep it a neighborhood road. The bridge, the goal is the ultimate design will look very similar to the Moffett Road Bridge, kind of the official bridge look like we've done. Open, to nature and so forth. So that's the vision. And the deck will more or less, we're replacing the top part of the bridge. The vertical supports would remain.
Everything but the piers, yeah. The only real change is new crosswalks, just for pedestrian safety. across
What were we
Green Bay
thinking
Road.
about a bike lane at one point? Or am I imagining that? No.
Imagining that. The goal, yeah, we wanted to keep it as neighborhoody as it is.
Yeah, I
Save as many trees
I
and
think that's the right call.
I have a question for you. It's actually that place going south after the bridge, going to Bluff and Tennis Court, that street. It's probably one of the most dangerous corner in Lake Bluff. I mean, because cars go there's Green Bay, and then people come and zipping around the corner, try to get to a stop sign, and then continuing. So if you happen to cross, people focus on the street and not on the pedestrian. Do we have you guys noticed that? Is that a report?
I know that there's a sight distance issue there, but we can't really solve that with the elevation of the bridge. So when you stop there, you're looking, as you're saying, that for traffic, from the south, you can see very well, but people coming over the bridge, you don't see as well. That is something that the elevations are going to end up the same by the nature of our project. I don't think we've had a crosswalk plan for that location, but it's something we'll revisit the plans, and if there's one warranted. One issue with that might be if people are coming over the bridge and they can't see the crosswalk because the bridge pitches up and down, that is something we have to be careful about.
If there's something we could look at a little bit more, because I'm a runner, so I run, this is my route to go to work, make a big loop. And many times I've had running around Green Bay, cars coming on my left side from a Lake Bluff neighborhood, and really not stopping. If there's anything we can do to.
We have the crosswalk planned at Witchwood, so over
No,
by
it's not
Stonebridge.
Witchwood, this is
Yeah.
Bluff and
And you're on the
Tennis.
other side of the bridge, but there is going to be one at least, within.
Jeff, I don't know if you could
certain
put like a
distance.
bulb there or like a bump out or something to more of a pedestrian protective zone there with a barrier curb. I don't know. We can
It's-
look at it. It's tight.
The street is so narrow that that's
Right,
generally
yeah.
not what they would recommend, because you only have the 2 lanes to begin with.
And it drops
the-
off too. It's like slope drops.
But that's something we can
Is-
talk to our consultant about.
Is a flashing light warranted?
Well, there is a split rail there and there's a lot of vegetation that'll probably we can probably clean some of that up and maybe clean some of that clip line of sight better as part of the project. Because there's some things that he said that just you can't cure it. There's just not enough space.
No, I hear you, but it's one of these spots in Lake Bluff that is, it's prone to
It's hard to look around. I know where you're. yeah.
prone to little attention from people.
And one of the things, I think when we looked at where to put crosswalks originally, is there really isn't a real reason to cross the street. That's why I was talking about the Witchwood crossing, because, to go on the west side of the street, like there's no destination right at that spot. So going north or south into a regular crosswalk a little ways away doesn't seem like it's out of most people's way. Like I said, we can relook at that.
Yeah, no, what I was talking about was the crosswalk going southward.
That's what I was gonna
Oh.
ask to clarify. You just mean
Okay.
crossing over Bath and Tennis.
Correct.
If-
Heading
Alright,
south on Green Bay
right.
Road.
Yep, I did not catch
Oh,
that.
Yeah.
Not
I-
crossing Green Bay Road.
I thought you were
Right.
talking Green Bay
But
Road.
going
That-
on
Oh,
Green Bay.
that's what I was talking
yeah.
about too. You
The
didn't get
other-
that?
yeah.
No, I'm sitting here trying to visualize what you're talking about. Now it makes,
Because of
I was
cars.
following you, Regis. 'cause
I was
have
too, but I
seen
thought
it,
you were
yeah.
following.
No, I was not following that up. I think there is
Been to that
going to be
neighborhood?
one there.
Well,
It is, I've seen it before where, and I think I've even turned, there's something about coming over the bridge,
Mhm.
heading south, where you're just not,
I don't know what the pattern is, but
Yes.
if you walk, you go south on the east side of and you're trying to continue on that street
Yeah.
just after the bridge, people are just not paying attention and they don't see you.
I think they're thinking of, I think drivers are thinking about the bridge itself and automobile traffic and are not thinking about
Mhm.
pedestrian traffic.
Correct.
I have definitely noticed that.
I
yes.
believe that is to be striped. We are moving a lot of the crosswalks on the north and south side streets more towards the street from where they are now. So that's more, so it's safer. Those sidewalks will come down to the street and over. But I think that what you're talking about will be striped as far as additional signage to
Cool.
make it safety. We'll have to look into that.
I think it needs to be more obvious to drivers that, no, you're about to cross a place where pedestrians are present. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna keep rolling. The CBD Block 1. To me, that one, and I think there's a grant, so there's $1 million in there.
Yeah.
But there's we're hoping for a grant that would reduce that substantially, right?
Yes.
My opinion is that we leave that in here. However, this board is going to want to discuss that at some point in depth. And the right time to do that's probably not now, but when we have a diagram up there and a reminder of the work that needs to get done regardless, and then talk about what role it's going to play for the community. I mean, I did see in the ranking, it's ranked pretty high because it provides a really good quality of life element for the community, but I think we'll want to have a discussion at some point about that.
And we were
So are you guys
expecting-
okay to leave that in for now pending a discussion?
That's exactly what Drew and I talked about, that by review of this and not reducing it at this point, we're not necessarily approving that that money be spent there. It's in order to enable it, should we be able to do it, should the stars align?
Yeah.
If they don't, we may be doing the bare minimum, which is substantially less, but still not, still quite a bit of money.
Right.
Yeah, by the time you meeting it in April, we're hoping to have an answer on that grant. I was told it was close, but until they don't have a date that they set to release, it's just
Yeah.
gonna come out one day. But it could come out
Maybe
any
it would
day
be
now.
worth it, even at that meeting, if we don't have an answer, to again, run through that diagram and
The
talk about
project scope, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And Jeff, the high level, the work that has to, the sidewalk, the road work, something's gonna have to happen in 24 months, right? I mean,
Yes,
Yeah.
the sidewalk is getting more and more cracked in the roadway. We've been patching it, but it's bad.
I didn't have any questions on the remainder of these. You guys can chime in, but I did want to ask if there was anything that we left off just because it didn't make the cut or, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
So one thing I wanted to say about Block 1, yes, I mean, we could delay that expense. I mean, we have many things that are concurrent to that expense. But again, we want Lake Bluff to be a destination community. It's one of the focal points in Lake Bluff, and we really cannot leave cracked sidewalks and a place that is in disrepair where people would head first into town. And so I would really like to put some priority to, let's finish it. Okay, let's get it done because we will get the money from someone else by people visiting us. I think this is actually more important than, okay, we can leave at disrepair for the next 24 months. That's my feeling.
I'm not really even going to comment because I really want to save my comments in the context of looking at the broader plan.
Okay, I'm good with that too.
I think I think that's fair. It's a large number. I want to hear what community feedback has been. I think that's part of Teska's review. So I think this is a larger subject. What I wanted to confirm, what you confirmed for me is that today we're not saying, yes, we're ready to spend $1 million on this. We're saying, let's make sure that the money is there so that if the stars align and we can do this project, we are able to do it without pulling money from an ongoing project that we're also planning for. So with that in mind, I think, continuing to review this as that being the parameters we understand makes sense, and understand that Regis has a point of view and I want curbs on my street. So there's always give and take.
You have a lake view. What do you need?
I know.
Thank
I've
you.
got ruts in my lawn, your lawn right now. Anyway, I'm joking. It's just given, it's give and take. That we have to continue to evaluate. And certainly fixing the cracks, I think everybody agrees we need to do. If there's a way to spend some additional money over that and get something spectacular, let's do it. But I just want to make sure that the finance committee isn't now making recommendations to the entire board. Yes, we're ready to do
Right,
this.
yeah.
And not that you want more, I guess, to chew on with that, but right now there has been a conversation with the garden club and others to try to put the dance statue back. It used to be on the corner in front of Anavasi that the garden club installed.
Yeah.
So right now we're looking at the block 1 to be inclusive of that project and put it at the train station where the artist and the garden club has decided that's where they'd like it put back. So right now we're kind of viewing that as grouped together because it's such similar work. You would do it all at the same time. And that's about $50,000.
Is that in the middle of the planter?
It was.
Okay.
So right now we could do all that work. It's all the same materials, all the same, so that's right. We're grouping that together right now. So when we say block 1, it's inclusive of that effort. So.
Yeah, it would be good to get that statue back.
So I think that's the capital.
Any other comments on that, on the capital plan for now? Okay, lots to cover yet in 21 minutes. So moving next to the pay plan, which is item 4C, review of the pay plan. There's a memo there dated March 4th describing this, and then an extensive document that is the official pay plan drafted for May 25th. Bettina or Drew, do you have anything?
No,
you'd
yeah,
like to
for the
talk
sake
about?
of time, we think there's a great opportunity to do a slight organizational modification and upgrade and transition from an administrative secretary role to a management analyst, and for a minimal investment, and really elevate some of the work that we're doing and support the department heads. And we just think that's a great opportunity and hate to miss it for such a nominal investment. And that's really long and short of it. And other than some other market adjustments, it's to the pay ranges, but with no actual, so that's usual.
Yeah, and Drew, I thought it was important to establish the pay ranges are changing, more than inflation, but pay raises for the fiscal year, it doesn't mean that we're taking salaries up. It's going to continue to be on
Case by
mostly.
case, yes. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep.
These ranges are just purely, they are the range that an employee could live in, but they are for marketing and hiring purposes. We remain current in the market,
Which we have to advertise now.
which, yeah,
Yes,
as
you
of
do.
January 1, we
Yep.
have to advertise.
Oh,
Really?
And
that's
Beth.
that's a change?
Yeah, Illinois. Mhm.
Interesting. I didn't have any other comments on this.
Okay.
Looked reasonable.
And my only comment is the identity of the communities that we cite in the pay plan as comparables, all fine communities. And perhaps the numbers is plenty and we don't need additional. But I know in other circumstances, we've also looked at, for example, Highwood and Bannockburn and other communities that maybe are a little smaller than some of these. So Drew and I talked about that. We're going to continue to think about it.
Yep. Are there any other questions? Water fund.
Okay, item 4D, review of the water fund budget and rate analysis. It's in your packet. If I can get there.
Again, we kind of hinted about this, the idea that the village, going back to when the village has set up the stormwater utility fund, the village had a steady stream investment in assets. This is an area which we need to be doing more. And as we dig down and deal with more and more water main breaks, the break fix approach, and the regulatory environment changing, we need to be in a position where we should shift the average age of our infrastructure. In order to do that, it's going to require a larger investment. In order to do that, a more I guess, larger rate increase than we've done historically. At the same time, nobody likes to recommend raising rates at the same time. It's still not a lot of money for this commodity, and it's a miracle that water is that inexpensive. But nonetheless, here we are. And so I think what we presented is a couple of different options, and staff is recommending a more aggressive initial increase, and then do a study, a more comprehensive study that we've kind of talked about doing for a number of years. And we didn't bring you an exact study scope from a specific consultant because we're still working with our consultant to try to get the scope of work that we prefer, which is both looking at our infrastructure needs, as well as we've been doing the rate side of things pretty well, but we want to bring in really a harder look at our infrastructure and also trying to close that gap and some of that water loss we've been dealing with, and really try to move the needle of our infrastructure in terms of making it a younger network. So that's kind of a high level overview, but and there's a lot, I guess, a multitude of solutions within that set, but that's kind of the general take.
Was the recommendation a 5% increase?
5% initial, and then it
okay.
would level off to
2.5 on the
but
out years.
that could change, but that's initial splash to get us in the right direction to investing at a higher level.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, to me, and every single dollar for the residents of Lake Bluff is important. But the 5% in real dollars, it's a pizza from Ferentino's, right? It's not going to create a hardship for anybody, and it keeps this fund solvent. And it seemed like a no-brainer to me.
Yeah, my only question was whether we then go from the 5% one time back down to 2.5, or it's, or we need to have something sustained, 4% sustained, for example, or, but I'm in agreement that we start with the 5% and then we evaluate whether it's advisable to go back down to where we have been historically, 2.5, given the water rates that'll be charged to us by
Others,
Jawa, right?
and the cost of the infrastructure, yeah.
Right. So it seems to me the 5% this year is called for, and we need to reevaluate thereafter.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, any other questions on item 4D then? Okay, item 4E, review of stormwater fund. There's a memo in the file dated March 7th regarding this. Remind me when we started collecting that. Has that been 2 years now? When did we start collecting? that?
July of 23?
So it will be 2 years in July, yeah. So 2 years or 18 months on, 20 months on, what have we learned?
Well, we have learned that we are still chasing other money to help really fund this project, the deep tunnel and all the straws, and that I think we've learned that people have used the system that's been designed. People who've have now, asked for credits, and those are being awarded as anticipated. I think the plan that we are working makes sense for the resources we have available. And yeah, I don't know that, I think we're on track, and the money we've got, that fund balance that's going to help us do what we want to do in the timeframe, the near term, and then we'll have sufficient funds, I think, to borrow and use to do the debt service as planned. I think the plan is working as we anticipated.
Right. And what I just really wanted to point out with this budget, I mean, there's not much here other than the storm trunk project that we can bookmark with the 3.9, is the capital contribution that coming from general.
Yep.
And knowing that return grant money will return to general.
Yep.
Because it's a capital contribution to an enterprise fund. So it's really more to just bookmark those events in this budget.
Yeah, and that's just because there was a change in the way the accounting was going to be done for the grant, right?
Right, exactly. Initially, we thought there'd be upfront funding, and now it's reimbursable
I remember that conversation. I don't have any other questions on that, Susan.
Okay, well, we had 21 minutes and now we have 13. So
We do have a staff report.
staff
but,
report. So let's turn to
However,
for
before
a
that,
13-minute staff report.
ideally, there would be a recommendation to approve the budget as presented to the village board, which will go at its first meeting in April.
So do I
That's-
have,
We've covered everything.
we need a motion? for that?
Operations capital, yes, ma'am.
Motion to recommend the budget as written, as reviewed today to the full board.
I'll make the motion.
And I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes.
Great, thank you. And then the staff update, Bettina has an update regarding one of our service providers.
So staff updates related to audit. In the next week or so, we'll be pushing out a RFP for auditing services. Hopefully we'll get a good number of responses to compare services and cost as well, and come back with a referral or recommendation for the finance committee. And that's really just to update you on the process that we're in.
We've been with Sikich
15 years
15 years.
at least.
So as I understand it, they're sort of the gold standard in this area. Is in corporate America, there's oftentimes a kind of recommendation that you change auditors from time to time. Does that exist in municipal?
Does.
It
And the
does.
village has when I first came to the village, we were using, oh gosh, they were in Deerfield. Back when there were
Somebody
more than
else.
4
Mhm.
at the time. But anyway, somebody else. And anyway, the village went for that reason, to get a different set of eyes on things, switched and then made the decision every 5 years or so over the last several years to say, let's switch partners in the group to have a different set of eyes
Ah,
within
I see.
Sikich.
Mhm.
Because of the relationship, it made sense. We liked the quality of work and the pricing seemed fair. And in the meantime, there's been fewer and fewer players in the marketplace. So that's kind of where we are now, but I think it's been a long run, and we're going to ask for Sikich to give us a proposal,
Sure.
and we hope they will. So
So this is not driven by an interest in moving firms, but it's a possibility.
It's a possibility. And it's driven to get information and to see where we're at in the
See where
market.
we are in the market.
And we have a relationship with one of the potential Lauterbach and Amen does work for us, and they could be a party that submits. And so we'd maybe have to deal with that, maybe not.
If they were our auditor, could they also be our provider?
So typically, I mean, their partner, Jamie Welke, will sign off and have a separate audit team review the audit and do those services when they are also doing our accounting work.
Uh-huh.
I'm not a huge fan of that.
Yeah.
I would not recommend it,
But it's possible.
but it's
People have done it.
possible. People have
Yes.
done it. It's possible. I would prefer not.
Okay, well, that will be interesting. When do we anticipate getting RFP responses?
So I think we're looking at April 18th as the return date.
So
Soon.
we'll review it
So-
in May.
Sometime by May, because we'd be looking at July to start the process again. So we need to have an auditing firm in place by then.
Okay, any other staff reports?
That's
That was
it.
Any interest in any trustee making a report or otherwise? All right, hearing none, I have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the finance committee is adjourned.
Is on.
Here's the release. Here
we go.
I'm good.
That's like, I don't know. I have no idea. It's like so counter. Like,
But I didn't do that. Why?
wow, and the flip flop.
Yeah, that's what I
It's like
mean.
a petulant child playing a game.
You can start. You guys ready?
Yes.
Hey,
Hi.
Ready?
how are you? Oh,
Great.
did you hear what Aaron said last time?
All right.
It was-
Let's start this meeting.
Save that for
Oh, we
later.
have more to discuss down here.
Before this meeting starts, I'd like to thank trustee Susan Ryder, who acted as president pro tem on the February 24th village meeting. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Susan. And trustee Taryn Fisher, who acted as president pro tem again on the February 10 village meeting, board meeting. And I'm very grateful to the two of you while I was having a lot of fun, by the way.
We had a lot of fun here.
We did, I'm sure, just as much fun as you have.
That's
No, I'm
great.
not afraid. Well, good evening and welcome to this March 10th, 2025 meeting of the Lake Bluff Village Board of Trustees. Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Cole,
Here.
trustee Fisher, trustee Freed,
Here.
trustee Hatch,
Here.
trustee Rappin,
Here.
trustee Ryder.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Please stand and join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next on our agenda are the considerations of the minutes of the February 24th, 2025 regular village board meetings, meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve a village board's minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Are there any changes and corrections? Thank you. It is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you, and the motion carries. Next on our agenda are the non-agenda items and visitors. The village president and board of trustees allocates 15 minutes during this item for those individuals who would like the opportunity to address the village board of trustees on any matter not listed on this agenda. Each person addressing the village board of trustees is asked to limit their comments to a maximum of 5 minutes. Do we have anybody present who would like to address the board? And I do not see anybody. Do we have anybody online?
We do have persons participating online. If anybody would like to be heard at this time for items not on the agenda, please raise your hand and you'll be recognized at this moment. Nobody appears to be doing so.
And I say we move forward to our next agenda, that is item 5. The village board sets the order of a meeting. The village president and board of trustees will entertain requests from anyone present on the order of business to be conducted during these village board meetings. Surely there are not too many items tonight, and I did not hear requests. We can do that, absolutely. Without any objection on the board.
No,
7A and 7B.
So moving on to 7A and 7B.
7B first.
Yes, 7B.
I will do 7B
I think
first.
7B first.
7B.
Yeah.
7B. And that would be our village administrator's reports. Item 7B, an informational update on seasonal gas-powered leaf blowers ban evaluation.
There was a memo in your packet, and essentially the Sustainability and Community Enhancement Committee has been discussing this. And at their most recent meeting, talked about recommending to you all a tighter ban that would go from the seasonal ban to a 9-month ban. And they had a number of issues that they wanted staff to look into, one of which was to explore how to maybe lightly require registration for service providers to aid in communication and to ensure compliance, but kind of be careful with that. So that's being looked at right now, as well as they talked about extending the current school district exemption. And they also had some questions about the original working group, the regional leaf blower working group that had gotten together a number of communities. And that group is coming together next week. The village managers from that group to talk about where each respective communities are and their analysis, and look and see if there's a reason to put that group back together and commence work again, or leave everybody to their own. But so right now, I wanted to bring that to you all to know that the SEC did, you had given it to them before. They gave a recommendation for a full ban. The board said, why don't you go back and look at something between a full ban and where we are today? And so they came back with an extended ban, but it's still, there's some still issues they've asked staff to look into. So before you get, I just wanted to give an update and say, they have talked about it. They've asked us to look at some other things. So before you get the full complete, I just want to give you a quick update. And that's really what tonight's was. If there's any other questions or comments, and happy to keep digging in that arena. Yes, sir.
One of the things in the document was you talked about the school having an exclusion. You did not talk about the park district.
The Park District has, they bought the equipment, they're working within it. They did have their carve out, if you remember, for maintaining a golf course. That they don't expect that to change.
Okay.
So
The carve out for the golf course is indefinite?
I think that is the way it's been handled in a lot of communities, even with, like, I think Evanston, if I understand correctly, they have a full ban on gas powered, but they do carve out the municipal golf course, is my understanding.
See, and the school district is seeking an exemption for
That's a good
which
question. I don't know if
property?
they've actually requested that additional time, or if that was just something that the SEC talked about, be willing to work with them on.
They initially, they requested a permanent ban,
I see.
and the SEC said they were comfortable with doing a 1-year ban for them to kind of figure it out.
1-year exemption for school.
Sorry,
For the school.
exemption.
Uh-huh.
So we're moving from a ban of, from May 15 to September 30.
Maybe, I mean,
to
that's
3
what they're
months.
recommending right now.
2 months in the spring to 1 month, no, 1 month in the spring to 2 months in the fall.
To allow for spring and fall cleanup.
So it's still a work in progress.
Understood.
When
There's-
when will we have a more final recommendation?
Probably in April.
One thing I noticed is part of the write-up was registering landscaping businesses, and maybe only in Lake Bluff, or making it very easy for small mom and pop businesses, or establishing a database for the North Shore where a registration in Evanston would apply to Lake Bluff, for example. What will be the infrastructure needed for that?
Don't know. I mean, it's been really softly shared so far. So like when the village did its seasonal ban, we talked with, I think we got Highland Park's list and some other communities that had a list, and we use that to mail out as a working list. But it's been shared softly now. But you know, the idea of creating this infrastructure, I think that'll come up in the phone call next week, frankly. So
Okay, thank you.
I'll be interested to hear more about that, because my opinion is it's just maybe a step too far. I think that adds extra work to our staff. And I think really the focus of the ban should be the community should be enforcing it. And if you have a landscaper using a leaf blower, it's your duty to remind that person or that team that it's not allowed during certain months in the community. When we start getting into maintaining lists or registering, it's giving me a little bit of heart palpitations for so many reasons. I'm just curious if we think this change would be potentially effective starting this season. If we're gonna talk about it in April, would we then want it to go into effect where?
I think you have a lot of flexibility in the sense that you have kind of like the seasons, right? You've got the spring and fall to so I think there's plenty of space. If you want a longer runway to talk about it, you have the summer, right? Because it would be difficult to do something now, I think, for the spring already, and get that word out. I mean, it did something last time pretty quickly, but I think we were not this far along. It was in February, if I remember. But you have some flexibility, but I think practically speaking, if you did a change, you probably want to institute it in the summer.
Any more comment on the board?
So I think the concern that was expressed is ensuring that people understand and are following the ban, whatever it is. And so communication is key. I take Taryn's point, it seems to me the community members have an obligation to know what's going on their property, right? And so I think communicating further with the community members, if the community members if we want the community members to pass along contact information for their service provider, then perhaps that, but I share Taryn's concerns, maybe for the same reasons, maybe for other reasons of getting into the business of tracking these folks. So I think I'd like to continue to look at it. I think it was very helpful to have this working committee. We were able to act very quickly upon when they concluded their recommendations or their findings a couple of years ago. And so I think continuing that model will be very helpful. Clarity is my biggest concern. And I don't think we can do anything this year because even if we were to adopt these recommendations, it would be merely changing May 15th, May 1st and May 15th would be the change, and it's already confusing enough. So I think we really aren't under a by April deadline. We really ought to be focused on making changes, if at all, this for the upcoming in this fall. So a way to be clear, a way to have accountability on the part of the homeowner. So the homeowner owns the responsibility to tell their vendor what it is they expect of their vendor. And I think we can continue to work with the ban for the next few months while we figure out how this is being applied and the success is having in other communities.
Thank you. There is one concern that I'd like to be addressed before we move forward. And I hear Trustee Fisher and I hear Trustee Ryder very clearly where we do not want to be too heavy on the regulatory part. One of the things we had as a feedback from quite a few residents I've heard is a person is using a leaf blower, a commercial enterprise is using a leaf blower on the street. A community member approaches that person and that person responds to a community member, "This is none of your business, go away."
Then the police
And so
are the next call.
we need to change the way if so, what do we recommend? What are we asking of our police department? What will be the change of policy at that level?
Well, I think you need an ordinance violation at that point on the homeowner, because that's the only person who's in control of the situation. I mean, I think we had a lot of examples, excuse me, previously of people that try to approach unmarked cars, unmarked trucks or trailers attached to these cars who are coming in for landscapers. So it should be on the community member. It shouldn't be on these people who are coming in.
I don't understand. On the community member, what do you mean by that?
Do an ordinance violation where if it's violated, they get fined.
On the community member?
Absolutely. The
Don't create a
homeowner.
contentious situation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Not the operator. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want community members engaging with people and trying to enforce laws. That's only going to lead to greater and more difficult situations. You want to make sure that enforcement's happening, and the only way to enforce that is whoever's paying that person, in my opinion.
Right, a fine.
Makes
Because
sense.
otherwise, I mean, you can add regulatory measures, but if the bare bones of it was never being enforced appropriately, it's just words and I think confusion. I think just enforcing what's already there first and then seeing if we need to expand later makes more sense.
Thank you. Is that a thing we can ask you to check with other communities to see how they will address that as well?
That came up in the original study, and we'll see if it's changed, if people have learned anything from the prior experience.
Okay, thank you.
Learning curve.
Is there anything else on the board before we come to our community here for feedback? No? Is there anybody in the community who would like to make comments tonight? Please state your name and your address. Good morning, good evening, Pam.
Pam Russell, 448 Gurney Avenue. The only thing I would advise, and I think Trustee Ryder said it, the communication is key, and you may want to enforce it with the homeowner, but unless you have some way to get out, as the village did 2 years ago, to whatever landscapers they knew, to let them know this ordinance is in place or this ordinance has changed, you're asking for more trouble. You know, if we go to 9-month ban, and please, my day yesterday was already destroyed. So, you know, it's starting, it's gonna be bad. There are all sorts of reasons to move forward. So I understand we're on a tight schedule for the spring, but please push for the fall and getting this in place. And if you can do it for the spring, even better. But communication, whether you register them or not, just for the purpose of communication, what's the harm in getting names so you can communicate with as many landscapers as possible? You don't have to use it as a disciplinary thing. You don't have to use it to raise revenue. But I think, Drew, you had said that the village has systems set up that it's fairly easy
We
to do
have
that piece of it.
architecture, yeah.
So please consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to make a comment?
Hi, Luciana Titanic from 410 East Prospect. I just wanted to touch on enforcement. I'm on board with the point of having the homeowners be responsible for what's happening on their property. I just, wanted to suggest how is the village gonna act on enforcement? If it's happening next to my house and I call the police comes in, maybe the homeowner is not home, but the landscaper is there. How is that gonna be documented? And is there gonna be a fine that the homeowner will be liable for? Because unfortunately, for some people, that's the only way that people make changes and comply with some of these things. I've heard or saw somewhere that a fine that in the current ordinance might be for the landscapers who might be breaking the ordinance, and it would be about $25. Correct me if that's wrong. But for some people, that might be just considered as, this is the cost of doing business in Lake Bluff. I'll pay the $25 and do what I need to do. So consider those amounts. So they are, reasonable, but also help with the change in behavior. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any more comments? So I'm curious to hear what will happen next from our communities, and I look very much forward to your next report.
You got it.
Thank you.
My most immediate next report has to do with Tesca. Yeah, come on up. So the other element in my report this evening involves the village's ongoing efforts to update its comprehensive land use plan. And the village hired Tesca along with Opticos to help prepare an update to the plan. And we are on the verge of unveiling a draft at a public hearing next week. And we asked Michael Blue and Andrew Dunham from Tesca Associates to come in and give you a preview of what that's going to look like and where the plan is at presently. So I'm going to put up a presentation. Give me one moment. Here we go. Floor's yours, Mike.
We're on?
Yep.
Well, thank you, Mr. President, trustees. Thank you very much for this opportunity to be with you here tonight. We're pleased to talk to you about the comprehensive plan and where it's been. Again, I'm Michael Blue with Tesca Associates. Just a few words of acknowledgement are in order. First of all, thank you to all of you for the opportunity to work on this exciting project with you. We want to thank the village staff who have been very, very involved in the preparation of the plan. It's really important that a community be involved in a plan. I know you get a lot of studies and whatnot, but a comprehensive plan is not sort of a turn it over technical kind of piece. It's something that evolves over time and that really requires the community to be involved. And the staff has certainly helped to make the plan very much a Lake Bluff focus piece. Even more to the point, the PCZBA has really dug into everything that is in the plan and made sure that it's in keeping with the village goals and its vision. And a lot of what you'll see tonight is their handiwork and insight. So our thanks to them. I would thank too my colleague Andrew, who's here and who will walk you through the guts of the plan in just a minute. Andrew took on the unenviable task of writing the first draft, which everybody then starts to hack into. So his fingerprints are all over this fine piece of work. Our colleagues at Hay and Associates, Dave Kraft, who you work with, very helpful in terms of understanding the community and the environmental issues. And our thanks too to the members of the community who came to all the pop-up events that we had and the stakeholder conversations. What you have before you is very much a community plan. And I say that to you as trustees because as you use it, it's important to us and it's important to you that you know that the document is not just something that we sat around and drafted or we cooked up with staff. It really does reflect the community. And that's something that's a tribute to the community for how involved they were in the process. So with this slide here is the contents of the plan. There is no absolute definition of what's in a plan. It's what's part of what's important to a community. And again, let's take a step back and remind ourselves, what exactly is this comprehensive plan thing? And I know y'all have a link to it, but it's a statement of policy. It's not regulatory. It's a statement of policy. It informs village regulation, but it's a statement of policy. As I say all the time, it's the answer to the question, what does the village want to see here? Because people call staff, I'm sure people talk to you and say, what does the village want to see on this property or in the downtown and that sort of thing? And that the plan gives a picture of that. It's not the absolute answer, but it sets some direction. And that's really its purpose. And that's why you see these things here. The last thing on the content of the plan is its implementation. And so implementation is very much a function of how you use it. And we always talk to communities about using the plan at budget time, right? What's ripe? What's the issue to be looked at now? And to apply it when you see a development proposals. So to the slide that we have here, I would just very quickly say, by the way of background, that it has been so far an 18-month effort. There have been a couple of bumps in the road, but really there's been some extra time spent evaluating what's in here. And it's based on a combination of the data that's collected, the feedback of community, the stakeholders that we talked about, and as I said earlier, working with the PCZBA and the staff in consultation to understand community priorities. I'm going to ask Andrew to walk you through those different sections that we saw in the table of contents. Glad to answer any questions or talk to you about it, and we'll be back.
Thank you, Michael. So Michael in the first slide mentioned how much this is a function of the community, and this is really significant community feedback. Over 4,000 website visits, 321 people are subscribed, so that every time there's an update, they'll get an email. They get web posts in addition to the posts that the village so graciously puts in their Lake Bluff letter, and tons of Common Map visits, tons of Common Map comments, and a lot of those comments are reflected in the plan. And if they're not within the scope of the plan, we make sure that staff has a copy of those comments, and perhaps it's something they can do at a staff level. Maybe it's something as simple as trimming trees. Not exactly a policy statement, but good to know. Next slide. Oh, either is fine. So land use is the foundational element of the plan. And the land use goals here are pretty simple, pretty best practice. Continuing to review and update codes. A good example of that is 15 years ago, there was no short-term rental definition in any plan. Now every municipality needs that so that every house doesn't become an Airbnb. So just for staff to kind of keep on continuing what they're doing with their good momentum of updating codes. Appropriate redevelopment in the central business district and the R5 zoning district. And we also see Route 176 and Route 41 is an excellent opportunity to kind of add some more commercial activity, perhaps some residential. But generally, aside from the sub areas that we're going to get into, land uses are pretty much the same. We know that people really like the single family character of the community and the vast amounts of open space. So why change that? There you go, the future land use map. We dive more into this in the sub areas, but yeah, just largely considering new development on the far western edge of the village and promoting redevelopment where appropriate. And yeah, so Western Lake Bluff, this is actually 3 different sub areas in the plan if you get a chance to turn through it. But we see the opportunity that comes with IDOT reconstructing the 41-176 interchange. Aside that, we'd like to see more sidewalks, trails, and that's included in our sub area plan. Horizontal mixed use, so perhaps some mid-sized multifamily residential connected to a separate freestanding commercial. We think that is feasible in this area, and the amount of amenities there and the access to transportation can really support that. And just kind of continuing the development that's already there, making sure the business park supports those entrepreneurs, making sure that different types of commercial are allowed as appropriate. So this is a rough concept, not at all a development proposal, but it shows kind of the things we're talking about. So good buffers along Route 41 to make sure that future development isn't as impacted by roadway noise. Finding these strategic sites for commercial development at intersections, that's the red stuff. Yellow is potential locations for residential of different types. And then purple, this area still is kind of an industrial and flex use. So appropriate light industrial buildings can be kind of sprinkled throughout. And just flexibility is the main takeaway in this part of the plan. Next slide. Yeah, so the central business district, very important to the community and required a lot of thinking and a lot of different approaches. So block 3, there's a lot of development already being floated for that. But basically our thought is to use that as a transition, stepping down from the downtown where there's storefronts to something that's more fitting for a residential neighborhood. Generally promote mixed use development throughout the downtown area where appropriate, and continue to support multifamily in the multifamily district. Next slide. And then this is kind of a rough mock-up of different opportunity sites. So there's the corner of Walnut and North at the very top. Those are 2 municipally owned sites. Other opportunities, block 3 shows the proposed developments that are already being floated to the village. And then block 2 shows a potential way that that block could develop, all while preserving some of the key historic structures that make downtown Lake Bluff. This and the next slide are pretty similar. These are former manor sites. One of the key recommendations we have, one, is to preserve the manor home because it's useful in the community. It's part of the architectural heritage of the building.
Sorry, for point of reference, this is just north of the Lake Bluff Elementary School.
Just north.
Of the elementary, you can
Elementary
see the
school.
top building, or the grayed out building, in the very bottom of the photo is the Park District's northernmost support facility by the golf course.
Is this school?
So the elementary school is to the right side of the photo, the corner, that's the elementary school.
I see. Yeah. So what?
So this is an estate that's it's kind of hidden behind a berm and some buffer of evergreens along the west side of Green Bay Road.
Is it just south of Belleforet?
It is south of Belleforet, but not due south. There's another estate there. But this is one that's been identified in the village's other planning documents, including its affordable housing plan. This is another opportunity
Who owns
site.
Privately owned?
Privately held.
Privately owned,
Yep.
single owner.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's interesting in that there's a manor home, but there's also some smaller cottages that are utilized on the property and have been historically.
Thank you, Drew. Yeah, no, very helpful. So basically for these former manor sites, our goal is to kind of establish density expectations that are in keeping with nearby neighborhoods, not to overwhelm it. And another thing we want to do is promote maximizing open space on the property. So one way that we can do that while also meeting some of the village's housing goals is to explore certain missing middle type of developments, which keep the density on the property about equal with its surrounding neighbors, but can really allow us to maximize green space. Another concept that you'll see in the next slide that we talk about is clustering development. So getting clusters of homes together, perhaps they have smaller yards, but allowing for more public access and public green space. Next slide, please. And then the village owned 10 acres. So this was once the subject of an RFP. And again, it's being kind of contemplated in this plan. The thought is to explore missing middle housing, to utilize the Jawa connection to get to Route 176. And a lot of other things are dependent on how dense it's going to be, right? So whether or not it should connect to the neighborhood, to the West Terrace neighborhood, maybe not if it's partially apartments. That would maybe over stress the street network there. But if it's kind of a lower density similar to the neighborhood next to it, perhaps that's doable. And then identifying and working around the key habitat on the property, wetlands, mature tree clusters.
And just, you'll hear that was talked about at the PCCBA level for a lot of these, I'll call them green fields, is the idea of making connections to existing neighborhoods, right? It's always a point of friction with an existing neighborhood, but at the same time, good planning will tell you the more the connections, the better in terms of distributing the load of vehicular traffic and modes of transportation. The more opportunities to go to different places, just reduces the load everywhere, right? And so that's going back to the Stonebridge site, same thing. It's like Tangley Oaks, one in, one out, makes it hard at that one point, right? It constricts it all. So that was talked about a lot, and the PCCBA struggled with that because they didn't want to open up the door to the existing neighborhood. At the same time, they understood the dilemma of trying, it would actually make it better if they did, but it's a dilemma. And so kind of a wait and see approach, but generally I think it's going to be a struggle. It always is.
Well, isn't safety a sale point though? Like, that's why I always thought Tangley did it, was because like robbers couldn't get in and out because there was one way, although it did happen.
So, but it forces, it's an auto-centric lifestyle, right? You're driving
it's
wherever you're
true.
going, right? Versus think about the east side where you have different opportunities on places and how to get there and different trips, shorter trips. It's like, you have more options.
But
You
for
can have
Tangley-
walking paths.
Tangley is a community, car community, fine. But as a pedestrian or as a bike rider, there's 2 or 3 other ways to get out, to go to school by bike or whatever else. So they're still very integrated into the community.
All right, and then one section that really hard to summarize just in a single slide is our environment and open space section. We know that this is really important to kind of the identity of the village, its natural identity. And we have 3 major takeaways here, which is kind of the maintenance of open space, habitat, good repair of ravines, other natural features, resiliency, using natural solutions to combat events like flooding and stormwater, and heat waves, things like that. And then reducing emissions, promoting electrification, both in vehicles, housing, and other green design practices. A lot of the points of housing have already been touched on. One thing we did discuss with staff was reevaluating zoning to accommodate potential development in certain cases on these heritage lots, the smaller sized cottage lots. Some people have houses there only on a single parcel, and it is not conforming to build on them. So just a way of kind of keeping the character of the village as redevelopment occurs and things like that. Removing barriers in development of housing and kind of clustering housing, all big things. Community character and design, basically continue what you're doing. Incorporate placemaking downtown, allow for events, reduce visual clutter and not a ton of signs on the road, let people see the natural areas, and continue historic preservation plaques. And then this image right here was something we thought up for the Scranton underpass and how to kind of improve the front gateway to the village. This obviously, there's stormwater and other considerations that might need to be done first, but we view this as a major opportunity.
Oh, this is very nice. That rendering is nice.
Yes, it is. Thank
Thank
That,
you.
for
I
the
cannot
record, so
take
that,
credit.
this infrastructure, the railroad bridge, bridges, there are a lot of transportation modes coming together there. There is conversations beginning to talk about commencing a phase 1 study to redo all this area with all those bridges, because it's like UP will replace their bridge. And so the idea of doing all that, it's going to take a long time to plan, but doing it jointly so that we can end up with places that look like this. But
True, didn't we finally get a bid on that rail? But like after years and years and years, we finally got a bid on the rail. Am I wrong?
that is Jeff's white whale. The answer is no. We have begged, we have met with people, and it's probably going to end up being Jake's white whale. And since that, we're going to be duct tape and bubble gumming it together until we can get it replaced as part of that's the rail, and that work has been identified as part of the deep tunnel project now. And so that'll get reworked as part of that. So the sooner we do that project, but I imagine there'll be a period of time where it's going to get worse before it gets better. It's just been hard to find contractors to do that type of work.
It is already worst.
Yeah, it is terrible.
Just wait. Okay, sorry.
Great, and just kind of finishing up transportation, we recognize the village's character in transportation. So one of the big things, aside from working with IDOT to get the interchange updated, is to work to get grade separation over the Union Pacific crossing, the at-grade crossing on the western edge of the village. Generally expand the trail network. That's part of the village's identity. Add traffic calming near schools. These aren't exactly speed bumps, but they can be other roadway design features that slow traffic down, especially near crosswalks and areas where there could be conflicts. And the village has had plans for adding new sidewalks and closing gaps. Basically, we just say, keep doing that, keep pursuing those. And then the final one is economic development, and these are generally just best practices. So engaging in sub-regional tourism, that's working with maybe event sponsors like Ravinia and things like that to continue having events in the village. Find ways to get and market the community to trail users. Tons of people go through the community for recreation. Continue to assess incentives, make sure that it's current, effective, and that it advances village goals. And where possible, perhaps there are places in public buildings that could have some sort of tenant. The village has been pursuing this, but our recommendation is to continue pursuing that. And then next steps, Michael can talk about this a bit.
Just to finish up real briefly, I would take a minute and just summarize what you heard are, especially in terms of those estates, especially in terms of some of those zoning issues. The PCCBA was really clear in terms of these are things we need to evaluate. So nothing changes automatically by drafting, implementing, or adopting the plan, right? It becomes a statement of policy. The PCCBA was really clear too in terms of the idea of the plan is not to take the tone of encouraging or looking for these estates to redevelop. It's more a statement of, okay, if somebody wants to do it, what is it that the village wants to see, as we said before. So in terms of next steps, as Drew mentioned before, we have the public hearing scheduled for March 19th. It's not next week, right? It's a week after. No, it is next week. Holy cow, time flies when you're having fun. So yeah, so that'll be the public hearing. This is part of the public input process. It's really more of a legal requirement by the state to adopt the plan. The plan is on the website. We're working with staff to push out words so that folks can read it and review it. They can either come to the public hearing and comment, or they can share comments through the website as they've been doing all along. And we'll be accumulating all that information. We're going to talk with staff about what else we want to do to reach out to the public. And then we'll come back to you with all that information for adoption. So thanks for the chance to share a bit of an update. If there's any questions, we're glad to answer them or hear any comments. But again, thank you very much.
Thank you both for that
Thank
great work. This is a good direction. I think this is going to be the seed for many other conversations and much improvements toward Lake Bluff. If we could get that guardrail, that would be awesome. But no, that's going to be great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I have just one small tactical question. Can you go back to the one where it was a map, a really high level map, and it showed yellow for housing? There you go. There you go. Is that housing in the industrial park?
On the east
Yes,
side?
it is.
Yes, so we received a lot of community comments that want to perhaps test housing in certain areas of the business park. Our thought is that we're not saying those lots are the only places it can develop, but if there is to be housing, it should be close to a trail, it should be close to commercial, it should be adequately screened from other things. So we don't want kind of a cluster of townhomes in between industrial buildings with trucks coming in and out. But we think that certain parts of the business park can eventually support residential and form this mixed use district. But again, that is if a proposal comes forth.
Thank you.
When you think about like what you see when you drive by Vernon Hills now about, that
Yeah.
mixed use
Yep.
over commercial
Yeah.
spaces, it's not too far fetched. And I will tell you that there has been some general inquiries about, I'll call it a mid-rise apartment building in the 41-176 corridor.
Mhm.
And people, that's an area where people see as an opportunity to maybe have more multifamily product. And during the comp plan public hearings, there's like the residents said, why not out there? So.
And it meets a range of goals for the plan. The
Yeah.
plan talks about creating different types of housing, having them in different locations, and then as Drew and Andrew both said about, having it be plugged into trails and connecting to the amenities and the shopping and whatnot that's there. It's an interesting idea.
The
Any-
north side of 176 isn't Lake Bluff though, right?
That is correct.
So none of that on this side, or the west side of 41 or north of 176 is.
That is correct. And
Bluff.
this is not in Lake Bluff, but there are some properties
Here
here
that
that go up, but the village's annexation goals would have that be part of the village.
I see.
And the idea of the north side of 176 to try to capture that commercial base, that has
Yeah.
always been on the village's
Mhm.
to-do list.
Mhm.
It is a strategic plan, and this is a thing Drew and I have been working on to
Mhm.
get these businesses along the commercial corridor to join Lake Bluff, for example.
And mostly, it's difficult to convince folks it's a great idea. I mean, it's a good idea, but to make it a great idea, and more often than not, what forces those decisions is when they need something that only the village can offer, and sometimes
Like
that's
water.
utilities. Yes. Yes.
Like clean water, yeah.
Yep. Any more comments on the board for Andrew and Michael? Andrew and Michael, thank you very much for this fine work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Sure. Do we have any comments from people in attendance tonight? And what about online?
If anybody wants to make a comment online regarding those reports, please raise your hand now and you'll be recognized through the Zoom call. No, sir.
And moving forward, thank you very much for these reports. Next on our agenda is item 6A, and that would be the warrants report for, no, 6A, yes. That would be the warrants report for February 25 to March 10th, 2025. Is there a motion to approve the warrants report?
So moved?
Second.
Thank you. And our warrants report tonight is for expenditure of village funds for payment of invoices in the amount of $449,311.89 for February 25 to March 10th, 2025. And again, all documentation is attached. I had the chance to read the documentation and I did not see anything out of the ordinary. Everything's pretty standard to what we usually see.
There
Any
was-
comments on the board?
If I may,
Sure.
there's one thing that popped that I had a conversation with Finance Committee Chair Ryder about on the warrant list. There was a payment to the Illinois Toll Highway Authority for a penalty.
Mm.
And we looked into that, and that's something that Police Chief Matt Smazinski had been arguing with them for it goes back to 2021. We were disputing a bill and finally couldn't narrow it down anymore, and for a small fee, just pay it to go away. So, but that was one of those that was, thank you for,
I just wondered if we paid people's tolls.
Yes.
Toll penalties.
we
'Cause
do
I have a
we do
few-
for
no.
police vehicles. For our
Add
police
it to the
vehicles.
list.
Thank you.
And to be clear, only for police vehicles that are not take-home vehicles. For those, the employees covered.
Thank you. Any more comments on the board about this warrants report?
Nope.
Thank you. So it is a roll call. Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Fisher. Trustee Freed.
Aye.
Trustee Hatch.
Aye.
Trustee Rappin.
Aye.
Trustee Ryder.
Aye.
Trustee Cole.
Aye.
The motion carries.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is our village ordinance report, and tonight this is Mrs. Willett. Do we have a report?
No report.
Thank you very much. Next would be my report, and I do not have a report either. Next is our acceptance of a correspondence. Please note all correspondence was delivered to the Village Board of Trustees in the informational report on February 21st and 28th, 2025. Is there a motion to accept the correspondence?
Motion to accept.
Thank you.
Seconded.
Thank you. This is a voice vote. Is there any comments on the correspondence? Anything? It is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. Next is item 11, a resolution authorizing the execution of a contract for low slope roof replacement at the Public Safety Building. Is there a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. The village conducted a bid opening on February 25, 2025 for low slope roof replacement on the Public Safety Building. The low bidder was L. Marshall Roofing and Sheet Metal, Inc., with a base bid of $189,000 plus unit costs. The village consultants, Structural Technologies, Inc., estimates the likely unit costs at under $10,000. Therefore, the anticipated total cost of $199,000 is below the amount of $255,000 budgeted in upcoming fiscal year 2026. The work consists of replacing the foam insulation and roofing material on the two flat roofs over the fire department garage and mezzanine. L. Marshall reshingled the village hall roof in 2017 and completed the work with no unexpected costs or problems. Any questions to staff on the board? Nope. It is a roll call vote. Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Freed.
Aye.
Trustee Hatch.
Aye.
Trustee Rappin.
Aye.
Trustee Ryder.
Aye.
Trustee Cole.
Aye.
Trustee Fisher.
Aye.
The motion carries.
Thank you. Next is item 12, a resolution authorizing the execution of a contract for trench drain replacement at the Public Works Building. Is there a motion to approve a resolution?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. The Public Works Department's main vehicle storage building was originally built in 1982 and has met the village's need over the past 43 years. As a result of this almost half century of use, the trench drain, which runs down the center of the building, has rusted and requires replacement. The village's fiscal year 2026 budget includes $30,000 for its replacement, which will include cutting open and replacing a portion of a concrete floor. The village conducted a bid opening on February 26, 2025, and the low bidder was Stuckey Construction with a base bid of $72,000. The village's consultant, Architectural Consulting Group, recommends budgeting up to 15% up to cover potential unique costs for a total cost of $82,800. This will require a budget amendment as it exceeds the $30,000 originally budgeted. If the board approves the resolution, staff will update the draft budget to account for this expense by utilizing existing revenue sources.
I think it just begs the question of would the 30,000 versus the 82, what was the major driver of that?
It was just a placeholder.
Okay.
It's very difficult to predict these small concrete jobs. Like it's hard to predict.
My question to Drew today also about that was, so fine, $82,000. Can we also maybe last more than 50 years or 46 years? And can we actually overbuild that? And Drew said, no, that's actually the overbuild solution. So we're bound to create that solution.
Yeah, I think that's right. Our consultant did, spec a very heavy duty drain there, a galvanized ductile iron drain. So I think we're as heavy duty as we can go with that drain.
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, sure. Any more questions to staff and to Michael? Seeing none, it is a roll call vote. Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Hatch.
Aye.
Trustee Rappin.
Aye.
Trustee Ryder.
Aye.
Trustee Cole.
Aye.
Trustee Fisher.
Aye.
Trustee Freed.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Clerk. Next is our trustees report. Do any trustees wish to make a report tonight?
No.
Nope.
No.
Nope. Moving forward, we do not have an executive session tonight,
Correct.
and therefore it is our adjournment. Could I please have a motion to adjourn tonight?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Thank you.
And we're adjourned. Thank you very much.
This is the first time there's been cookies that I had.